My husband called me Barren. He used it to justify his pregnant mistress. He assumed I would just disappear. The reality? I had a doctor's report in my purse that said exceptional fertility, and I had his report, the one that said 0 motile sperm. He assumed he was the victim. He never realized I was the executioner. It all crystallized at a dinner party about 4 weeks ago. One of our mutual friends, Chloe, all expensive dentistry and 0 internal monologue, leaned across the table. She had that look, that awful, pitying, well-meaning look. "So," she chirped, her voice slicing through the polite chatter, "when are you two finally going to have kids?" The table went silent. You could hear the microscopic scrape of a knife on porcelain. And then Matthew, my husband, he performed. He let out a long, tragic sigh. He reached across the table and placed his hand on mine. His hand was warm, and I remember thinking how strange that was. That a thing so cold could feel so warm. "We're struggling, actually," he said. His voice was pitched just right. The perfect gravel of manufactured grief. "It's been very hard." He paused. He looked at me, his eyes full of what everyone else in that room thought was love. What I knew was ownership. "On Sarah," he finished. The wave of pity that washed over the table was so thick I could have drowned in it. It was all for him, poor noble Matthew, trapped, tethered to his broken, barren wife. He just soaked it in. He was the star of this tragedy, and he was loving the applause. I let my face crumple just a little. I gave them the performance they expected. The sad smile, the flicker of a brave, broken-hearted wife. I felt the sound of a single ice cube cracking in my water glass, a sharp splitting sound. It was the only real thing in the room. Hard on me, that's what he called it. He had no idea that at that very moment in my purse was a manila envelope. He had no idea I'd found his real doctor's report, the one from the clinic across town, hidden in his locked desk drawer. The one that said, in stark, clinical black and white, 0 motile sperm. He didn't know I had the printouts. The emails from his mistress, Angela, the ones where she said, "I can't wait to tell the world about our baby." He sat there holding my hand, projecting his grand, tragic narrative onto me. He thought he was the author. He didn't know he was just a character in my story, and I was just about to write his ending. To understand the beauty of that moment, the sheer exquisite geometry of the trap, you have to go back. 3 months earlier, to the day he broke my world, or more accurately, the day he tried to. I was a strategist, a damn good one. My entire career was built on shaping perception, managing complex campaigns, seeing 10 moves ahead. When Matthew and I decided to build a family, I stepped back. I didn't see it as a sacrifice. I saw it as a pivot. I was reallocating my resources from one enterprise, my career, to a new one, my family. I managed our lives, our finances, our future, with the same methodical dedication I used to manage a 7-figure marketing budget. I was, as he liked to say, handling it. After a year of trying, he sat me down in that echo chamber of a living room. He didn't yell. He was disappointed. That was his weapon of choice. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft. He slid a single piece of paper across the polished marble coffee table. My name was at the top. I picked it up. My hands weren't even shaking. Not yet. I was still a project manager, reading a report. The words were clinical. Ovarian reserve. Diminished. Follicular count. Low. A dozen other devastating medical-grade terms. And then at the very bottom, a summary. A conclusion. 1 word. Barren. The sound rushed out of the room. I remember the smell of the lemon oil our housekeeper used. I remember staring at a fleck of dust dancing in the sunlight hitting the chrome leg of the table. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just shattered. It was a failure. Not an emotional one, a logistical one. The one enterprise I had reallocated all my resources to. I had failed. My body, the one thing I couldn't manage, had failed. And that's when Matthew's real crime began. My grief was immediate. It was a physical thing. A heavy, wet blanket I couldn't get out from under. I grieved for a future that had just been stolen from me. I grieved for the career I'd so easily set aside. And he used my grief as his shield, as his excuse. He started working late. He would come home, see me on the sofa, and just sigh, as if my sadness was an inconvenience. as if my pain was a chore he had to manage. "I can't, Sarah," he'd say, backing away if I tried to touch him. I can't, looking at you. It just reminds me of what we can't have." He made me a leper in my own home. Then came the gaslighting. I'd ask where he was. I'd question why he smelled like perfume. "Are you crying again?" he'd ask, his voice sharp. "Sarah, your grief is making you paranoid. You're suffocating me. I'm trying to be strong for both of us, but you're not even trying. You're just wallowing." He manufactured my failure, and then he punished me for it. He didn't just break my heart. He was systematically trying to break my mind, to convince me that I was not only broken but crazy, and I for a time believed him. So I performed. I performed the role he had assigned me, the broken wife. I downloaded the brochures. I left my browser history open, adoption agencies in Eastern Europe, surrogacy costs, grief counseling for infertility. I played the part. I was the fragile, grieving woman, desperate to fix her own brokenness, to give her poor, long-suffering husband the family he deserved. And I'll never forget it. One night I was on my laptop staring blankly at a Meet the Children page. He walked by, heading to the kitchen. He thought I was absorbed. He thought he was safe. In the dark, reflective glass of my laptop screen, I saw him look at me, at the brochures, at my broken form, and he smirked. It was just for a second, a tiny, involuntary micro-expression. But I'm a strategist. I've spent 20 years reading boardrooms. I know what I saw. He wasn't grieving with me. He was relieved by me. That was the first crack in the ice. The second crack came on a Tuesday morning. I was handling the finances, as always, paying our joint Amex bill. I was still the project manager, after all. I was just ticking off the charges, his business dinners, his client gifts, and then a charge. Le Papillon Jewelers, $3,000. "Matthew doesn't buy me jewelry. Not in 10 years. I'm too practical," he says. My heart didn't race. It just stopped. I scrolled down. Another charge. The Oberoi, presidential suite, room service. From that business trip he took to Chicago last month, $2,400. And then the one that changed everything. A recurring charge. Blue Sky Property Management. $4,500. Not once, but for the last 3 months. This wasn't a one-night stand. This wasn't a panicked mistake. This was a budget. This was a plan. This was a second life. The grief, that heavy, wet blanket, it didn't just lift. It evaporated. It was burned away by something clean and white-hot and pure. Rage. The strategist was back. His home office was his fortress. Sleek dark wood, the smell of his cologne, old leather and self-satisfaction. It was locked. A new biometric scanner he'd had installed for security. He was so arrogant. He thought I was the grieving, incompetent wife from the sofa. He forgot I was the one who set up his entire home network. He forgot I was the one who synced his biometric data. He assumed I was too broken to think. He never realized I had enrolled my own thumbprint as a backup administrator 6 months ago. I didn't ransack the place. I was a surgeon, his desk, one locked drawer, the one he kept his private things in. I didn't have a key for that. But he'd made a mistake. He'd bought a cheap, residential-grade lock, not a corporate one. A heavy-duty metal letter opener and 30 seconds of leveraged torque, and the lock snapped. It wasn't a binder. It was a slim, black moleskin portfolio. I opened it, and there it was, his second life. Emails, printed, from Angela. "My dearest Matt, I can't believe we're finally doing this. Leaving her is the right thing to do. I took the test again this morning. It's definitely positive. I can't wait to tell the world about our baby. You're going to be a father." My blood ran cold. A father. I kept digging, and there, at the back of the portfolio, tucked into a flap, was another lab report. From a different clinic. A men's health clinic across town. His name was on it. Matthew. I read it. 0. Motile. Sperm. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went to the printer. I scanned every page. I saved it to a small silver USB drive. I printed 1 copy of everything. Then I put the originals back, exactly as I had found them. I closed the portfolio. I jimmied the broken lock back into place so it looked closed. He would never even know I was there. The next day, I went to my own doctor, the one I'd been seeing for a decade. I brought the fake report, the one he'd given me. She looked at it for about 10 seconds. "Sarah," she said, looking over her glasses. This isn't from our lab. In fact, this isn't our letterhead. Where did you get this?" I played the part. Matthew handled the testing. He said he'd have your office send the referral. He brought me the results. My doctor's face was a perfect professional mask, but her eyes were angry. "I see," she said. "Let's run our own tests, right now." 2 days later, I was back in her office. She looked at me, her face a mixture of confusion and, I don't know, pity. But this time it was real. "Sarah," she said, holding her own report. "I don't know what that piece of paper you brought me was, but it's a fiction." She turned the report so I could see it. "Your tests, they're not just good, they're perfect. Your fertility is, for a woman your age, exceptional." It wasn't a moment of relief. It was a moment of pure, cold horror. He didn't just lie. He conspired. He fabricated evidence. He went to extraordinary lengths, spent God knows how much time and money, to create a high-quality forgery. All to break me. All to create a convenient ironclad excuse to leave. I realized in that instant that no court would ever touch this. A divorce court? They'd see a no-fault separation. They'd split the assets. He would walk away with his reputation intact, seen by all our friends, by Chloe, as the tragic hero who stuck by his broken wife as long as he could. The legal system couldn't, and wouldn't, touch the truth of his crime. The only justice available was the justice I made myself. She takes a simple, sturdy manila envelope. She takes her report, exceptional fertility, and folds it. Slides it in. She takes his report, 0 motile sperm, and folds it. Slides it in. She takes the printed email from Angela, our baby, and folds it. Slides it in. The Barren lie was his foundation. It was the rock on which he was building his new church. But he'd made a fatal, arrogant error. He'd built his new life on another lie. A lie he didn't even know was a lie. The fact that his mistress was pregnant. And that was the lie that would bring it all down. My husband, Matthew, had spent 3 months meticulously building my prison. He'd forged lab reports to convince me I was barren, all to justify leaving me for his pregnant mistress, Angela. He painted me as the broken, grieving failure. He painted himself as the tragic, long-suffering victim. He assumed his lies were perfect. He never counted on me finding his real lab report, the one that said he was sterile. 0 motile sperm. He never counted on me finding the emails, the ones proving his mistress was pregnant, just not with his child. He made one fatal assumption, that I was too busy grieving to be strategic. He thought the game was over. He didn't realize I was just setting up the board. I had my weapon, the envelope, the truth. But a strategist knows you never fire your biggest gun first. You don't just win the war. You have to control the battlefield. You have to shape the narrative. You have to dismantle their supply lines, break their alliances, and isolate their king before you ever checkmate him. He had built his power on an assumption. The assumption that he was the hero and I was the tragedy. My revenge, my campaign, would be to dismantle that assumption, piece by piece, until he had nothing left to hide behind. I went back to work. Not my old job, but my real job. I called my campaign Operation Barren. A little on the nose, perhaps. But I found it motivating. For the next 2 months, I continued to play the part. I was the perfect grieving wife. I left the adoption brochures on the coffee table. I'd occasionally perform a few quiet tears when I knew he was watching. I was fragile. I was incompetent. I was handling nothing, and he got comfortable. His arrogance swelled to fill the space my grief had left. He was so sure of his victory. And that's when I launched Phase 1, the financial attack. As the incompetent wife, I still, of course, handled all the joint accounts. It was a chore he'd gratefully offloaded to me years ago. He was the breadwinner. I was the bookkeeper. I was watching our main checking account like a hawk. I knew Angela's pregnancy was his ticking clock. He had to secure her, secure the new life he'd promised her, before he could detonate his old one. And then there it was, a Thursday, 10:04 a.m., a wire transfer request, $250,000, from our joint savings, my inheritance mostly, into a new numbered holding account I'd never seen before. Blue Sky, the property management company. Angela's new condo, He was gutting our shared assets to build her nest, using my money to do it. It was so clumsy, so brazen. He truly believed I was just a ghost in the machine, a sad little admin bot who would just click approve and go back to crying. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the bank's main line. I called David, our private banker. David and I had spent 5 years managing my portfolio before Matthew was ever in the picture. David knew exactly how incompetent I was. I put my grieving wife voice on. It was getting very, very good. "David?" I whispered, adding a slight vocal fry, a little tremor. "Hi, it's Sarah. Sarah and her maiden name, sorry. Sarah and his last name. Sarah. How are you?" "Oh, David, I'm not good. I'm sorry to bother you. I'm just so worried." I let the silence hang. Rule 1 of shaping perception. Let them fill the void. "Worried?" he prompted, his voice shifting from banker-friendly to concerned. "What's going on?" "It's Matthew," I whispered. He's been under so much stress. We've had some personal setbacks, and he's not in his right mind. He's being erratic. And I just saw this huge transfer request. I don't know what it's for, and he won't talk to me. He just yells. I'm scared, David. I'm scared he's, I don't know, gambling? Having some kind of breakdown? I let a small practiced sob crack my voice. I don't want him to ruin us, David, but I don't know what to do. I can't handle this. Checkmate. David's voice went cold. Professional. I see, Sarah. You did the right thing by calling me. You're on the joint account. You have every right to protect your assets. I'm going to place a temporary spousal review freeze on all major asset transfers, effective immediately. Nothing over $5,000 moves without both your signatures in person. Oh, thank you, David, I wept. Thank you. I feel so useless. You're not useless, Sarah, he said, his voice full of righteous indignation for me. You're being prudent. I'll handle it. I hung up, and I watched the transfer status online. 10:15 a.m. Pending. 10:17 a.m. Flagged for review. 10:18 a.m. Blocked. That evening, the explosion was glorious. He came home late. I was, of course, on the sofa with my brochures. He didn't even say hello. I heard his briefcase slam onto the marble kitchen island. The bank, he yelled, his voice echoing in our sterile minimalist tomb. I fled at with a little terrified jump. What's wrong? They froze the accounts. David, that idiot! He froze the goddamn accounts. Some spousal review nonsense? Did you do this? His eyes were bulging. The tragic hero was gone, replaced by a panicked, cornered bully. I gave him my best wide-eyed, broken stare. Me? I whispered. I don't even know what that is. I just paid the electric bill. Did I do something wrong? Oh God, Matthew, did I break the bank? I made myself look so small, so utterly incompetent, that his rage just bounced off me. He couldn't blame me. I was too stupid. No! He roared, running his hands through his hair. You're useless. You can't handle anything. I told him. In marketing, you call it seeding the market, softening the ground before the product launch. I called Chloe, the table hopper, the gossip, the one who had asked the kids question. I, of course, broke down on the phone. I need a friend. I feel so alone. She was there in 20 minutes. People like Chloe can't resist the smell of a crisis. Sarah, honey, she said, squeezing my hand. You look terrible. Is it the struggle? I looked up, my eyes brimming with tears. It's not what you think, Chloe, I whispered. What is it? She leaned in, her eyes wide with predatory curiosity. It's Matthew. I didn't mention infertility. I didn't mention the money. I just planted seeds. He's pulling away, I said, letting a tear roll down my cheek. He's just not the man I married. He's angry all the time. He's cold. He's working at all hours. I don't know where he is. I ask him, and he snaps at me. He told me my grief was suffocating him. He said I was paranoid. That was the key word. Paranoid. It's the word abusive men use to describe women who are getting too close to the truth. And women like Chloe, they know that word. Chloe's face changed. The pity was gone. replaced by a kind of aha look. A new narrative was forming in her head. He said you were paranoid? She asked, her voice dropping. Honey, is he seeing someone? I don't know. I cried, burying my face in my hands. I'm probably just crazy, right? That's what he says. I'm so broken. I'm sure it's just me. I'm losing my mind. I let her comfort me. I let her pat my back and tell me, no, honey, you're not crazy. He's the one acting strange. He's the one who's... I just cried and shook my head. No, he's under so much stress. It's my fault. It's all my fault. By the time the check came, I had achieved my objective. Chloe left that lunch a woman on a mission. I wasn't the broken, barren wife anymore. I was the poor, abandoned Sarah. And Matthew? He was no longer the tragic hero. He was the gaslighting, unstable, cheating husband. The social narrative shifted in 48 hours. He started getting the cold shoulder at the club. Friends were suddenly busy when he suggested golf. Wives who used to kiss his cheek now gave him a tight, thin-lipped smile and walked away. He had no idea why. He was losing his social armor. He'd come home even more furious and see me on the sofa, grieving, and he'd just stare at me. He was connecting the dots, but in the wrong way. He thought my grief and paranoia were somehow leaking. He thought I was the liability. He was right, just not in the way he thought. The campaign was working. His money was blocked. His mistress was panicking. His social standing was collapsing. He was cornered, humiliated, and, most dangerously for him, his image was cracking. He was a narcissist. He couldn't stand the loss of control. He couldn't stand being seen as the bad guy. He needed to reassert his narrative. He needed to end it, and he needed to end it in a way that proved he was the victim. He needed to make me the villain, once and for all. He needed a public execution. Sarah, he said. His voice was full of that fake, deep pity, the voice he used when he gave me the Barren report. We need to talk. I looked up, my eyes wide and frightened. Okay, talk. No, he said. Not here. I want to do this right. I've booked a table. My heart didn't pound. It didn't race. It just clicked into place, like the final gear in a complex machine. A table? I whispered. Perbacco, he said. Tonight, 8 p.m., please. Just come. Perbacco. Not a quiet bistro. Not our home. Perbacco. The most expensive, most public, most visible restaurant in the city. The place with the 3-month waiting list. The place where billionaires propose and politicians celebrate. The place with the floor-to-ceiling windows, where every single table is a stage. Our anniversary restaurant. He wasn't just breaking up with me. He was staging his final performance. He was going to execute me publicly. He wanted an audience to watch his noble, tragic speech as he finally set himself free from his broken, barren, paranoid wife. He was so arrogant, so profoundly, beautifully stupid. He was so busy building his own stage, he never stopped to think that I might be setting the lighting, that I might be in the control booth, that I might be the one holding the script. Perbacco, I said to the empty room. 8 p.m. I took the manila envelope, and I put it in my purse. I had lost almost everything. I had lost the life I thought I had. I had lost the man I thought I'd married. I had lost the future I thought I was building. But I wasn't done. Not until I faced him. Not until the assumption met the reality. The envelope was my silver bullet. But you don't just fire your best shot. You win the war first. Matthew had built his power on 2 assumptions. That I was barren, and that he was a saint. My job was to destroy both. First, I attacked his finances. I played the part of the incompetent, grieving wife. When he tried to transfer $250,000 to a new account, the down payment for Angela's condo, I made a trembling, paranoid call to our private banker. I didn't ask to stop the transfer. I just expressed worry that Matthew was not in his right mind and acting erratically. The accounts were frozen. Instantly, he was trapped. He couldn't explain why he needed the money without revealing the affair to the very man who managed our MySA portfolio. His new life was put on hold. Next, I attacked his reputation. I arranged a breakdown at lunch with Chloe, our resident gossip. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just planted seeds. I told her he called me paranoid. I let her be the one to suggest he was cheating. In 48 hours, the narrative was rewritten. He was no longer the tragic hero. He was the gaslighting, unstable husband. I was no longer the broken failure. I was the poor, abandoned wife, cornered, his money blocked, his mistress panicking, and his social armor cracking. He did exactly what I knew he would. The narcissist needed to regain control. He needed a public execution to make himself the victim again. He set the stage himself. Perbacco, our anniversary restaurant, the most public place in the city. He thought he was writing the final act. He had no idea I was the one holding the script. I had a choice. I could have mailed this. I could have given it to a lawyer. I could have sent it to Angela anonymously. But that would have been a private settlement. This was never about a settlement. This was about justice. His crime was personal, but his performance was public. The punishment had to match. He wanted an audience for his final noble lie. I was going to give him one. For my final devastating truth. I walked in at 8:02 p.m. The maitre d', a man named Julian who had known us for a decade, saw me. His eyes widened just a fraction. He had, no doubt, heard Chloe's version of the story. "Mrs. his last name," he said, his voice a low, respectful murmur. We have your table." "Good evening, Julian," I said. My voice was clear, calm. It didn't tremble. I was wearing the red dress. In a room of muted grays, blacks, and navies, I was a walking 5-alarm fire. Julian began to lead me through the dining room. And that's when I saw them. He was already there. He was wearing his power suit, the custom Tom Ford. He looked confident, relieved, like a man who had finally come to a decision. And he was not alone, sitting next to him. Not across from him, next to him, in the seat that was always my seat, was Angela. She was beautiful, in a soft, uncomplicated way. And she was radiating that smug, territorial glow of a woman who believes she is won. Matthew had brought his pregnant mistress to our anniversary restaurant to break up with his barren wife. The sheer, colossal, biblical arrogance of it. It almost made me laugh. He wasn't just staging an execution. He was throwing a victory parade. He was so stupid. He thought her presence was a killing blow. He thought it was his final, unanswerable move. He thought I'd see her belly, and I would just disintegrate. I would cry. I would scream. I would make a scene. And he would get to be the calm, rational man, trying to control his hysterical, paranoid wife as the entire restaurant watched. He would be the victim, finally, publicly, and irreversibly. He had no idea. Her presence wasn't his weapon. It was mine. I could feel the whispers. "That's her." Chloe was right. Oh my God, he brought her. The social narrative I had seeded was blooming. No one in that room was looking at me with pity for being barren. They were looking at him with contempt for being a bastard. I arrived at the table. Julian, professional to the last, pulled out my chair. "Thank you, Julian," I said. I sat down. I placed my simple black purse on my lap. Angela didn't look at me. She just smiled a little at her water glass. The victor, Matthew. He looked at me, and he gave me that look. The one I'd seen in the reflection of my laptop. The look of pity and relief and contempt. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. "Thank you for coming. I know this is hard. I wanted you to meet Angela. I wanted to do this. Honestly. The word hung in the air, so thick and foul it could have been cut with a steak knife. "A waiter," I said, looking not at him, but at the waiter who had materialized. "Just sparkling water, with lime." The next 5 minutes were the most exquisite torture of my life. We sat there, in silence. He, the conquering hero. She, the fertile prize. And me, the executioner, just waiting. I watched him. He was reveling in the tension. He loved this. He was the main character. He cleared his throat. He'd rehearsed this. I knew his strategic comms cadence. This was his big pitch. "Sarah," he began. He even reached for my hand. His face tightened. A flash of annoyance. I had missed my cue. "Sarah," he started again, pulling his hand back. "I'll always care about you. You know that. What we had, it was real. Was past tense. But we've been struggling. This thing with the infertility. It's broken something. I can't live a half-life, Sarah. I can't. Half-life. My half, presumably. I've been so unhappy. I've been grieving too. Grieving the family we were supposed to have. And I deserve to be happy. We both do. He was getting frustrated. I wasn't reacting. I was supposed to be crying by now. He gestured to Angela. And then he did it. He took her hand. Right in front of me. And Angela has... She's giving me the one thing I've always wanted. He looked at me, his eyes full of that terrible fake pity. The one thing you can't give me, Sarah. He let the words land. He leaned back, his arm protectively, possessively around Angela's chair. A real family, he said. A child. She's pregnant. There it was. The assumption, delivered like a killing blow. The final, perfect, public declaration of my failure and his victory. The entire restaurant was silent. Everyone was watching. They had heard. He had made sure of it. He smiled. A sad, tragic smile, waiting for me to break, waiting for the tears, the screaming, the satisfying collapse. He thought he had won. He had no idea. His victory was the trigger. The strategist in me. The old me. She just took over. It was like watching a campaign launch from the control room. I simply reached down to the black purse in my lap. I clicked open the clasp. A sharp metallic snap. It was the loudest sound in the room. Matthew's smile faltered. This wasn't in his script. I pulled out the manila envelope. It was thick. It was heavy. It had weight. I placed it on the table. And then, with one deliberate motion, I slid it across the polished wood. It stopped, perfectly, right in front of his plate. His eyes darted from my face, down to the envelope. He was confused. You're right, Matthew, I said. My voice was calm, clear. It cut through the silence like a scalpel. We do deserve the truth. He looked at me, suspicious, worried for the first time. He thought it was divorce papers. He thought it was... I don't know. He picked it up. He fumbled with the clasp. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a sudden fumbling anxiety. He pulled out the folded sheaf of papers. He unfolded the first one. I watched his face. I had dreamed of this moment for 3 months. I watched him read the letterhead. My doctor's name. I watched him read my name. I watched him read the summary. Follicular count. Excellent. Ovarian reserve. Strong. Prognosis for conception. Exceptional. His brain. It stalled. It was a piece of data that his entire operating system couldn't compute. It was a file error. He stared at it. Exceptional. He looked up at me. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated confusion. He was lost. What is this? He stammered. This is fake. Keep reading, I said. He read his name. He read the date. 6 months ago. And then he read the conclusion. 0. At that exact moment, a table somewhere behind me, someone dropped a fork. I watched Matthew's face. He read the report. Once. He didn't understand. He read it a second time. His brow furrowed. And then he read it a third time. Click! It was the sound no one else could hear. The sound of the tumblers falling into place. The sound of his entire, meticulously constructed, narcissistic world imploding. It was the sound of my fertility. Meeting his sterility, the blood. It didn't just drain from his face, it fled. It was a rout. His skin turned a color I had never seen before. A waxy, gray, translucent, dead. His eyes. His smug, superior, pitying eyes. They went vacant. He had connected the dots. My fertility, his sterility, her pregnancy. He didn't even look at me. He couldn't. His head, it just swiveled. A slow, mechanical, horrified motion. Away from me, toward Angela. Angela had been watching this all, her smug smile frozen, turning into a rictus of panic. She didn't know what the papers said, but she knew what they were doing to him. What is it? She whispered, her hand tightening on his arm. Matt, what is it? What did that bitch give you? She snatched the reports from his numb gray hands. And she read them. Unlike Matthew, she wasn't confused. She knew exactly what zero-modal sperm meant. Her face, it shattered. She knew, he knew. And he knew that she knew. And in that one perfect, suspended, silent moment, his new life, his real family, his grand noble excuse. It was all revealed. A cheap, tawdry, pathetic lie, his and hers. He looked at her. And his voice, it wasn't a roar. It wasn't the voice of the man who'd yelled at me in our kitchen. It was a whisper. A dead, hollow, rattling whisper. He could barely get the word out. He looked at her belly. He looked back at her face. You knew. No, she shrieked, and the sound just tore through the restaurant. No, Matt, I thought it was you. I swear to God, I don't know. But it was too late. The lie was out. His lie and her lie. They had just collided in the middle of Perbaco, and the wreckage was absolute. He was frozen, gray, defeated. She was hysterical, sobbing, exposed. The entire restaurant, every single diner, was staring. This was so much better than the hysterical wife scene he had planned. This was justice. Then slowly, calmly, she stands up. I looked down at him. He was a shell, a hollowed-out man, publicly gelded by a single piece of paper. He called me Barren to justify his life, I thought. The truth was my weapon. But the truth is a funny thing. It doesn't just liberate. It incinerates. I dropped them on his plate, right on top of the filet mignon he would never, ever eat. Those, I said, my voice just loud enough for our table, are the real divorce papers. My lawyer, a real lawyer, not the forgery service you used, drew them up. I'll have my lawyers contact yours. I turned. I looked past our table. I made eye contact with Julian, the maitre d', who was standing near the door, watching, his face a perfect mask of professional horror. I gave him a small, polite smile. Oh, and Julian? My voice was clear. Separate checks, please. She walks. She doesn't run. She walks, her back perfectly straight. She walks past the staring, silent tables. She walks past Chloe's table. She walks past the bar. She walks to the door. Julian. Julian rushes to open it for her. He holds it open. Good night, madam, he whispers. She is alone on the street. The city sounds rush in. A distant siren. The hum of traffic. The cool night air hits her face. She stops. She looks up at the night sky. People say revenge is empty. They say it leaves you as hollow as the person you destroyed, that it doesn't heal the wound. They're wrong. I didn't feel hollow. I didn't feel full. I felt balanced. He took my life. He took my trust, my career, my future. He tried to take my mind. He built a prison for me out of a single vicious lie. And I just gave him the truth. He assumed I was a tragedy. He never realized I was a strategist. I stood there. I took my first breath. And for the first time in a year, I wasn't performing. I was just me. In the end, it was never about the lie. It was about the assumption. He assumed she was a tragedy. He never realized she was a strategist. He didn't just break her heart. He tried to break her mind, and in doing so, he handed her the perfect weapon. Thank you for joining us for this incredible story. Now, I have to know your thoughts. Leave a comment below. What was the most satisfying part of her campaign? Was it the financial attack that froze his assets? Was it the social attack that destroyed his reputation? Or was it that final devastating restaurant scene? If you found this story as compelling as I did, please like the video. And if you want to ensure you never miss a single master plan, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. Every share and subscription helps us unearth more stories like this. It's the best way to support the archive. Until next time, stay balanced. And stay 10 moves ahead.